I'm not a doctor or a scientist. In this video, I'll be drawing from studies and expert assertions to form my own logical conclusion. This is for educational purposes only. We often hear the saying, there's no evidence that masturbation is harmful and no evidence in favor of semen retention. But this is only a partial truth. What it really means is that no single study strings all the biological pieces together. Yet the science already gives us the pieces, and when we connect them, the picture seems, at least to my eyes, very clear. I believe that masturbation, especially to an excessive level, is detrimental to the organism, and the preservation of these energies through semen retention is highly beneficial for one's health and longevity. I will use the rest of this video to illustrate why I believe so. At the core is one word: degeneration. Biology runs on trade-offs, and one of the deepest is the conflict between reproduction and longevity, what's often referred to as the disposable soma theory of aging. The more energy and hormones the body channels into reproduction, the less it can devote to long-term maintenance and survival. When the body is engaging in frequent masturbation, it is increasing the activity of the gonads. When gonadal activity is stopped, such as was the case for castrates, the progression of balding is halted, and in those who have not yet begun balding, baldness is entirely prevented. This was shown in the 1940s by J.B. Hamilton. He found that men who were castrated before puberty never developed baldness, no matter their genetics. Men castrated after puberty, if they had already begun balding, froze at whatever stage they were at. Their hair loss simply stopped progressing. In some cases, especially where balding was still in its early stages, even partial regrowth was observed. And if they had not yet begun balding, then they were spared from it altogether. Hamilton even demonstrated that when testosterone was given back to these men, the balding process immediately restarted, continuing right where it had left off. Though we don't officially acknowledge that masturbation affects lifespan, we do acknowledge that halting of the testicular secretions does extend life, and in my view, these are essentially the same thing. Masturbation implies the activation of the gonads. Various studies on animal and human castrates have shown lifespan to be extended when the testicular secretions are halted. A study on 40,000 dogs found that castrated dogs lived longer than intact dogs. Another study found the same with Korean eunuchs, outliving normal other Korean men at the time by up to 14 to 19 years. Of course, castration is not recommended for any man, as it carries many serious health consequences. It is only in the context of halting testicular secretions that we use this example. In fact, castration is not in any way optimal. In spite of its secretion halting benefits, castration profoundly affects the male organism, both on a mental and physiological level, that can strip much of the beauty and meaning of man himself. What the castrated animal or human has gained in lifespan came at the cost of his very manhood. He is emasculated and loses many of the masculine traits of man, often becoming very timid, submissive, and effeminate. To really recognize this difference, you can consider the beauty of the stallion versus the castrated gelding horse. The stallion is considered a thing of beauty, nature's work of art, very graceful in movement, strong in temperament, and an inspiring work of nature. The gelding unfortunately loses the benefits that come with the production of the testicular secretions, though it maintains the longer lifespan. This principle isn't just limited to animals, it's even seen in the plant world. There's a fascinating study showing that if you remove the flowers of soybean plants before pollination, their lifespan jumps by more than 50%. In other words, when reproduction is prevented, the plant lives markedly longer. That mirrors the same reproductive longevity trade-off we've been discussing. Whether it's testicular secretions in men, germline signals in worms, or flowers in plants, halting reproduction frees up resources for maintenance and survival. And this is the big piece of the puzzle when it comes to masturbation and longevity. Whereas castration halts testicular secretions entirely, semen retention reduces their stimulation in a more natural way, and this reduction of gonadal activity has been shown to slow down degeneration and increase longevity. And increased longevity often goes hand in hand with improved health, since what allows an organism to live longer is usually a reduction in illness and degeneration. There is a well-known study often cited in modern discussions that found men reporting 21 times or more ejaculations per month had a lower risk of prostate cancer than those reporting only 4 to 7 per month. It's important to note that this observation was purely correlational, not causal. The study didn't prove that frequent ejaculation prevents prostate cancer. It simply showed that they happened together. Scientists themselves acknowledge this limitation, and it's a meaningful distinction. Correlation is not causation. Moreover, when other lifestyle factors such as diet, exercise, weight, or smoking are taken into account, the protective effect often weakens or disappears. And some other studies have found no clear link or even higher risk, particularly for aggressive or late-onset prostate cancer. In short, the evidence is far from conclusive. So while it's tempting to use that study as proof that frequent release is healthy, a deeper look shows it's far too thin to build your entire argument on. In fact, this study stands out precisely because it goes against the broader pattern we see throughout biology, that lower reproductive activity is generally associated with greater longevity and organ preservation. Across species, reduced mating frequency conserves energy, lowers hormonal strain, and often extends life. The same principle applies to humans, where excessive reproductive activity can tax the body's reserves and accelerate degeneration. Across the animal kingdom, reproduction often comes with degeneration. Many species show clear signs of bodily decline during the mating season. Male adders often stop feeding and lose significant body weight. Deer burn through their fat reserves, and Pacific salmon undergo severe muscle breakdown and organ degeneration. In fact, some creatures do not survive reproduction at all. These are known as semoparous organisms, whose single reproductive effort is followed by death. Charles Mercier, a leading psychiatrist of the late 19th century, aptly illustrated this process. The function of reproduction has by its very nature a disintegrative, deteriorating influence upon the organism in which it occurs. With each reproductive act, the bodily energy is diminished. The capacity for exertion is lessened. The languor and lassitude that follow indicate the strain that has been put upon the forces of the body, the amount of energy that has been abstracted from the store at the disposal of the organism. When we look specifically at prostate health, the balance tips even further. Many of the standard medical treatments for prostate enlargement or prostate cancer, such as 5-alpha reductase inhibitors or androgen deprivation therapies, work by reducing androgen activity, which in turn lowers sexual drive and dampens the reproductive system. In practice, these therapies demonstrate that it is precisely the suppression of androgen signaling that brings relief and slows disease progression. Since androgens are considered the primary drivers of prostate growth and cancer progression, lowering their influence remains the core strategy in treatment. So while one correlation-based study is frequently touted as evidence that more seminal releases are better, the weight of both biology and clinical practice suggests otherwise. Moderation or even restraint seems to protect the prostate and increase longevity. And this is before even considering the simple logic around sperm itself. Sperm is the only substance that can create life, and many smaller organisms simply die when producing this substance due to the massive nutritional withdrawal it entails. How could such an invaluable substance that goes on to form life not be considered of high biological value? To consider semen loss worthless or of negligible importance just seems counterintuitive to logic. And although we may not have the direct studies on semen loss and health in the human, there are in fact studies on semen loss in mice, and these studies too indicated that semen loss shortens life. The study on male mice from 1972 concluded, "From these results, it appears that mating and the loss of semen may be responsible for shortening the lifespan of bulb C male mice." This finding leads one to further speculate that sperm and seminal plasma, if unused, are reabsorbed into the body, and this process of reabsorption may prove to be beneficial to the individual. Furthermore, it is not just the sperm, but the seminal plasma that is of great importance. One of the essential nutrients of the body is choline, and the richest source of choline in the body is found in the semen. Choline is responsible for cell membrane health, neurotransmitter production, liver health, DNA regulation, among many other functions. Deficiency of this substance has been linked to certain cancers, cognitive disorders, organ degeneration, and more. If such a significant amount of this nutrient is present within the semen, would it not appear beneficial to conserve it rather than expend it unnecessarily on sexual gratification? Does this sound like an expendable resource, considering that high levels of it remain present in the semen? The same goes for many other constituents in the sperm, such as zinc, spermine, spermidine, and so on. In the end, we don't need one perfect study to tell us what is already clear from different angles. Reproduction takes from the body. It drains energy and nutrients, and this trade-off shows up all throughout nature. Semen itself carries substances of real value, like choline, zinc, and spermidine, the very building blocks of health, yet it is often treated as if it were disposable. To me, this makes little sense. Whenever reproductive activity is reduced, life and health are preserved for longer. The same truth seems to hold in man. So while science may not spell it out with one clear study, the logic still stands. Conserving semen is conserving life.